Hello everyone and welcome again to Minimalist Gourmet, where today I'll be teaching you how to make buttermilk biscuits. That's right, these tender, flaky, buttery, delicious biscuits go great with everything and are super easy to make. Let's get started. First thing we're going to do is measure out 2 cups of all-purpose flour in a nice big bowl. We have 1 tablespoon baking powder, teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of white sugar. Add this into your flour and give it a quick mix so that everything is well distributed. Now break out your grater. That's right, we are going to need a grater for this next step. Might sound a little weird, but just trust me on this one. A plate will help too. I have 1 stick of butter that I put in the freezer about 45 minutes ago and is nice and solid. The reason that we froze it is because we're going to grate it on this grater. This works really well to make nice small pieces of butter that are very easy to integrate into our flour mixture. Grate the entire stick of frozen butter on your finest setting before adding it into our flour mixture. Try to work quickly, as heat is the enemy of making biscuits and you don't want your butter to heat up and melt. I'll be using a pastry cutter today, but if you don't have one of these, a fork will work just as well. Now we're going to integrate the butter into the flour mixture here by pressing it and rotating around. The goal here is to spread this evenly throughout the flour mixture and have a very nice, fine, kind of sandy texture when you're done. Because we grated our butter, this shouldn't take very long. Just go ahead and go through until you've mixed the butter completely in with the flour and you've reached a texture that looks a little something like this. It should resemble like a fine ground cornmeal or a very, very fine sand. This looks great. Now I'm going to add 1¼ cups of very, very cold buttermilk to my dry mixture. Depending on how thirsty my flour is, I may need to add an additional ¼ cup of buttermilk later on, but I won't know that until I start forming my dough, so we'll determine that later. And we're going to add 1 cold egg. Start mixing up your dough, and do keep in mind that when making biscuits, you want to try to work the dough as little as possible. Now only about 15 seconds into mixing, I can see that this dough needs a little bit more liquid, so I'm going to add in about another ¼ cup of buttermilk. I ended up using 1½ cups of buttermilk in total, and this is something that you'll get an eye for as you make these more. What you want is a dough that is somewhat sticky, but will form a ball and pull away from the sides of the bowl, as you can see here. And remember that you want to work this as little as possible until it just comes together so we don't ruin the texture of our biscuits later on. Generously sprinkle flour all over your work surface because this dough is going to be rather sticky. So we don't want it sticking to our work surface, our rolling pin, or anything else, and make sure to sprinkle a little extra flour on top as well. Now, as we roll these out, we're going to be rolling it out flat, then folding it over like a book, rolling it out flat again, folding it over like a book, and repeating this process over and over. This is what creates all of those beautiful flaky layers in biscuits that are so delicious and delectable, so don't skip this step. You'll repeat this rolling out and folding process anywhere between 7 to 12 times. It really depends on your dough. The way that you can tell is that you'll see it turn from this kind of shaggy dough that doesn't want to hold together into a nice solidified piece of dough that you can roll out flat that has a relatively smooth surface. So really, again, you're going to play this by eye. Once your dough looks nice and smooth like this and doesn't really have any breaks, you know it's ready to cut out your biscuits. And we are on to cutting out biscuits. I'm going to take my biscuit cutter here, and remember when cutting biscuits to push down and turn completely once down. So watch. We're going to push down all the way to the bottom, and then we're going to twist, just like that. Don't twist before, you'll break those layers. If you don't have a biscuit cutter, that's perfectly fine. You can use a pizza cutter, a knife, or anything with a really sharp edge. However, do not use a cup or anything that has dull edges. What's going to happen is it'll crush down all of those layers on the biscuits that we worked so hard to create, and they won't rise or really look or taste correct. Cut out as many biscuits as you can from your first rolling. Now take your scraps, form them back together into a dough ball, which we are going to roll out one more time with our rolling pin and flatten it back out to a nice level. Again, we're going to cut as many biscuits as we can from this, and if we have any scraps, we can repeat the process until we don't have anything left. Your biscuits can be round, square, triangular, thin, thick. It totally depends on your tastes. Today, this is what my biscuits look like. They're going to be about the thickness of my finger and the diameter of my palm roughly. On a greased up baking sheet, we're going to place our biscuits. Surprisingly enough, you actually want your biscuits to touch slightly at the edges because they kind of help each other raise in the oven. If they're separated, they won't get quite as much height on them, but they'll cook up fine. So if you can, go ahead and make the edges touching just a little bit and put them in the oven at 475 degrees for 15 minutes. Quick 15 minutes later and our biscuits are done and looking delicious. Take a look at all of those flaky layers that we created. It was absolutely worth the extra 2 minutes to roll it out correctly. You can brush a little bit of melted butter on top while still warm if you'd like. And guys, it really is just that easy to make these delicious buttermilk biscuits at home tonight. They go great with so many things, or hey, just throw a little jam on them and eat them alone. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time today and hope to see you again here real soon on Minimalist Gourmet.